Pessimism leads to weakness, optimism to power. Good evening and welcome. This is Face the Nation. Our topic of discussion today is taking Sri Lanka into the future. Joining us this evening on the show are Chandra Jayaratne, former chairman of the Ceylon Chamber of Commerce, Dhananath Fernando, CEO of Advocata Institute, Chandra Wickramasinghe, chairman, Theme Resorts Sri Lanka, as well as Rohantha Athukorala, former chairman, EDB and Sri Lanka Tourism. To pose questions from our panelists this evening, on to my immediate right is Newsfirst, consultant director at Newsfirst, and on to my immediate left is Shihar Anis, journalist, joining us this evening on the show. You too can join in as far as the conversation is concerned. The number to send in your messages via WhatsApp is 076 656 5353. The number once again, 076 656 5353. Keep your questions short and sweet so I can pose them to our panelists as the show goes on momentarily. Let's get the ball rolling today with Mr. Chandra Jayaratne, former chairman of Ceylon Chamber of Commerce. Mr. Jayaratne, in terms of the priorities that should be adhered by the government in power, what are they? And are they really focusing on them right now?
Well, I would reckon the best example to take for the government in power is to see that if somebody takes over the business of Tatas tomorrow as the CEO of Tatas of India, how will they go about managing Tatas of India to deliver what the promises the CEO made to the appointers, the key shareholders? In this case, many stakeholders, some of whom have significant conflicts of interest between each of them. Their demands might be not what the government thought, might be not what they portrayed. So therefore, what would somebody do? I would, in such a situation, if I put the same issues to what Mr. Anukumara Dissanayake has to do today, I would take a long break to sit back, do a situational analysis, don't make judgments, don't make things, don't try to please your promise of delivery too early and make a mistake. In your situational analysis, you will find probably that's the actual resources that you're available at your hand as the president and the team. You would also find the real challenges, the real conflicts, the real team that is there for you to implement, and you have to be a communicator. There may be an election to come. You have been the best communicator of your team. Today, you have been silent in a different role. Communicate. What I would have done is communicate to the people the change you are going to bring about, and the change be deferred. As you said in your first speech, talk to the people, add to what you know, what you don't know, even change your promise of delivery for a while. Don't promise too much, don't try to rush. I believe some of the quick decisions of trying to give subsidies, trying to please some, trying to signal some things, you may miss out quite a bit. I would have taken till the end of the year, if I had been the president of this country in that situation, to listen to the signals, listen to your things, and even go before them and say, sorry, what I said in the promise for delivery, I cannot deliver tomorrow or today, but maybe even in a changed way. I would say, if you have rushed, if you go about the way you are trying to go, you may put pressure upon you. Understand the team, understand the expectations, understand the conflicts and the challenges.
Jayaratne, it's just only 10 days since Anukumara Dissanayake has taken over as the 9th executive president of the Democratic Socialist Republic of Sri Lanka. After 10 days, you are saying that promise of delivery too early. Give us some context to it. What do you mean by it? For those who are watching the show tonight, they would want to know, what do you mean by promise of delivery too early? What does that mean?
The two pretty questionable decisions would be the offer of the increased subsidy suddenly without knowing. Without knowing what the IMF team you have not met. They all will say good things, we will support, the international community is giving very good signals. But can you afford these things? Can you afford the priorities for some of the things that you are trying to do? Promise too early to bring corruption to book. You need a public prosecutor first. Electricity prices have been brought down, power prices have been brought down. There are better schemes that your opponents have suggested, like going for QR code, cash transfers, prices remain market, those who are targeted be given. But in the rush, have you missed out the real winners of tomorrow for your regime?
Ms. Jayaratne, giving it some context to what you are saying right now, let's look at the recent decrease in fuel prices. Initially, Anukumar Dissanayake at political fora said that the prices of fuel would be brought down by around 150 rupees. But this did not happen on the 1st of October. It was only brought down by 20 rupees. So is he hastily taking decisions? Doesn't seem like it. But when you talk to the business community in Sri Lanka at present, they look at the change that has happened in Sri Lanka with renewed vigor, with welcoming notes in terms of the anti-corruption rhetoric that has taken center stage in the political fora that Anukumar Dissanayake was campaigning on. Isn't that what Sri Lanka needs at this moment of time?
Sri Lanka needs long-term stability, taking the poor out of where they are, narrowing the gaps, getting out of the debt sustainability issues. The real challenges lie in the longer term. The immediate term should have been to ride on the wave of success. As a communicator, you could have motivated take the case in point, the power reduction or the fuel reduction. Why couldn't the reduction be, okay, we'll give 25,000 rupees per hectare to the right people who need? Why should the subsidy be given straight away? Why couldn't the price be of the fuel prices be as it is, and give the discount through a cash transfer immediately to the identified segments? Now these are the long-term needs of this country. The change people are asking for is not just a signal of a change, a signal that change will happen which will deliver value at the long term to solve the country's problems.
One quick question to you, Ms. Jayaratne. You were the chairman of the Ceylon Chamber of Commerce. How do you view the change that has happened on the 21st of September in the eyes of the business community in Sri Lanka?
Business community has to be optimistic, has to be supportive. But I will give you two examples nobody is talking about. One is, can the business community and this country's foreign exchange needs go without a decision on SVAT? Right? If you are going to take the simplified VAT or the special VAT, or whatever way, IMF has told us to take it away. We have accepted it. It's going to kill our ability to earn foreign exchange, which is our number one need. That's one. Second is, in March next year, the Financial Action Task Force is coming back for their their next review. We are in this state. Can you imagine what will happen if they look at, if anybody who has understood FATF regulations and their assessment, it's a tick box. There is no hope, there is no thing. Have you done something? On two grounds, we are going to get zeros. What have you done to network the investigations, prosecutions, penal actions? That's one, zero. How many have you prosecuted between last 2019 where we got from grey list into back? One case has just been filed. What's that? 0.1.
Right.
So if there is 1 second only, just to say that if we get back in this state to grey list again, can you exporters and importers and the country get any bank credit?
Right. Thanks a lot, Mr. Chandra Jayaratne, the former chairman of Ceylon Chamber of Commerce. I now move my attention towards Dhananath Fernando, CEO of Advocata Institute. Dhananath, you've come on the show many a times. We've discussed off the show and on the show with regard to the country's economy. I happen to have watched the Advocata Institute video on analyzing the 4 main candidates' election manifestos. That was of the Chandra Wickramasinghe administration, Anur Kumar Dissanayaka's, Sajid Premadas's and Nama Rajapaksa's as well. And there you say that the most pragmatic manifesto is of the SJB in terms of where the country should be heading and where the country should supposed to be heading in a couple of years. Now, Anur Kumar Dissanayaka is in power. What's your thoughts now?
First of all, Shamir, what we did was an analysis of all 4 manifestos on the good, bad and ugly. And nowhere we have said SJB is the most pragmatic. I think all manifestos had their own strengths as well as weaknesses, and we have been very open about it. That's number 1. Number 2 is in terms of Anur Kumar Dissanayaka President's priorities, I think he can look at on 2 main dimensions. I have a slight different view to Mr. Jayaratne's in terms of taking time, because generally the observation, Shamir, is any government coming to power, their window to do reforms is about 100 days to 150 days, because afterwards you get a lot of pressure on multiple fronts. So you have to be prepared to perform well within those 100 days. So taking time may not be advisable, but on those 100 to 150 days, he has 2 fronts. One is what can be done to grow the economy. That's the first. It is like a very aggressive plan of hitting boundaries in cricket terms and scoring runs. The second one is, which is main promise, which is the anti-corruption front. But we all need to understand anti-corruption front takes a little bit of time, because it's a judiciary process. You cannot intervene, you can execute the process, you can speed up the process, but it's on that independent judiciary. But within those 100 days, you have to aggressively move on the growth narrative. At the same time, there are baseline scenarios you cannot slide back beyond that. One is the IMF agreement, not because IMF agreement says everything right, it is the baseline, because otherwise we cannot move anywhere. If we derail from the IMF program, exporters cannot export, there will be a premium to opening up the LCs, so you cannot slide below the IMF threshold. That's number 1. Number 2 is on the debt restructuring. We have to expedite. I feel what we have received is not adequate. Since that, we have to grow the economy faster, because the only way debt to GDP is a ratio. No, you have the numerator and the denominator, and the way that you can bring it, balance it, is either you balance at the top, which is the debt, or the GDP. So those would be my 3 broader priorities. If we were to go to specific exercises like action points, in his manifesto it says they are going to simplify the tariff at the customs, which is a good thing, and that will also bring down corruption. Easy to do. You evaluate and you bring the tariff to 3 structures. That will bring the prices down for consumers, bring down the corruption to an extent, and it will give a positive signal. That's number 1. Number 2 is on the growth front. Second one is, already there's the economic transformation bill with some provisions on industrial zones, and because the rest of the bottlenecks for investors are more the structural reforms. In this very show I have mentioned there's a land issue, and in their manifesto actually the land digitization and so many actions have been listed out. But those actions takes a little bit of time. Since now you already have some baseline, best is to execute on those things. But I agree with Mr. Jayaratne, do not rush to give these subsidies and to announce those things, because that is not expected, or I mean that is not a main expectation by the people. The mandate is for anti-corruption and to make sure the stability is continued. I think he has given very positive two indications at his address to the nation. We are not going to derail from the IMF program. We are going to continue with the debt restructuring. I think that gave the positive signal, which is right. But do not rush to give those subsidies and burn your fingers at the early stages, because there are 2 more elections are in the pipeline.
Right. So, Dhananath, you spoke about the IMF debt restructuring, as well as the discussions that will be held, like even as we speak. There was a meeting held between IMF representatives as well as the government's economic council and their leadership team as well. Do you think there is room for debt restructuring negotiations to take place? Because we saw the manner in which how the debt restructuring the ISP holders were discussed and agreed upon just prior to the elections as well. So there is no room for this, is it?
Yes, according to my understanding, Shamir, now it's at the final stage. It's almost, it's a done deal. It's just the operational procedure that needs to do. That is basically issuing the new sovereign bonds once you get the clearance from on the comparability treatment. I do not see room to again go back and renegotiate on the sovereign debt, because it's pretty much a sealed deal.
So there is no way that, even though discussions are taking place today, there's not going to be any discussions on that front?
I doubt. According to my knowledge, it is not the case. What the IMF, the reason for their visit is because already the 3rd review for the 4th tranche is due. It was due in, I think, August, September, because of the election they postponed. So they want to take the conversations forward. That's the main reason for the IMF visit, and that's a critical review. Because already with elections we have announced so many giveaways, so now we have to check our budget and see actually whether are we still in line with what we have promised.
So Dhananath, one question before I move to Chandra. Now, when Anurukumar Dissanayake was contesting the elections, many in the Colombo circle said that he won't be the best bet for the business community in Sri Lanka, because he would play the Robin Hood policy, take from the rich and give it to the poor. How do you view this? Because it seems like the stock market has really started ticking very well. You see the rupee appreciating quite steadily as well at the moment as we speak. So all in the right direction. For those who thought or were pessimistic about Anurukumar Dissanayake's leadership, what do you have to tell them?
I think he has to prove that he is for the sensible economic policy. From what I saw, but before the election, what he said was rather the Robin Hood policy. He said, rich can get richer, but poor cannot get poorer any further at this context. So that was his main message. But I think it is his responsibility to bring that credibility, because ultimately it's an economic issue and you need the business community. But I think on the address to the nation, as I mentioned, he has given the right signal, but the challenge would be on sustaining it and having the right people at the right place. But I think for the currency to appreciate and the stock market to pick up, because after his speech, because I think the business community had some level of doubts or like some pessimism if it was the case, that has been, I think, he addressed in his address to the nation. So I think that's why the stock market again picking up, and also I think for the rupee to appreciate, it is mainly the deflationary policy that the central bank is adhering. And they are not printing money anymore, which is a good thing. And those are the baseline that we have to defend, not to derail the IMF program. Second, do not touch the central bank independence. If we anyway do it, we are going to go out from the IMF program. And I think he has a good policy package, which is the IMF governance diagnostic, which is on anti-corruption. All the 116 recommendations with 16 priority recommendations are on his manifesto. And it's an easy job because they have listed down what to be done, who is responsible, what is the timeline. It's
Right.
if he's even not prepared to take over the power, that book itself for anti-corruption is more than enough, including to address some of the concerns that Mr. Jayaratne mentioned on the financial task force. We are late. I mean, we are definitely late, but that would be a good handbook for implementation.
Right, thank you very much, Dhananath Fernando, CEO of Advocate Institute. I now move my attention towards Chandra Wickramasinghe, Chairman of Theme Resorts, Sri Lanka. Chandra, last week we had a member from Sligo who spoke about the fact that there has to be a complete reversal on the VFS deal that took place, and the fact that there should be a way in which that people could be assured when they come to Sri Lanka that they get a visa. And just 24 hours after, the government resorted to implementing the old system at the airports, and now it's very readily available for the general public. How do you view these steps taken by the Anurukumar Dissanayake administration?
I think President AKD, I call him AKD, it is, so Brian is AKD, but I think he had taken the brave and quickest decision to save the low-hanging fruits. I think they understood it. Last government had been waiting for April, so actually that's a very good decision he had taken. Some people who have advised him very thoroughly, we would have lost the whole tourism boom into this country. Now, I also have some travel agents, inbound operators, and all our groups were looking for other destinations, alternative destination for Christmas. And this is a very good time that they cleared it. Because it was, I know Mr. Chandra Jayaratne, you had gone to courts on that, and after going to courts, after getting a Supreme Court judgment, still we couldn't remove that, and we were struggling. And I think whole tourism industry, our dependents about 2 million people, must thank him for this, because last government didn't hear anything from from the ministers even going and telling that this cabinet paper didn't go on circulation for them observation. They never asked for observations. So I think it's a very good move where the tourism industry dependents are very happy about it, because tourists started coming. I have about 300 tourists in September today, all came. So at that time, it took about 4 hours, 10 minutes to clear 41 people. So they cancelled the next groups. There are a series of groups. They don't want to come, even the embassies. They are very worried about it. That is clear. I hope he will find a very quick solution to the next foreign exchange earner, is foreign employment. Today you can't get a passport. If I have to renew my passport, I might not get any renewal. I might not get a passport within 3-4 months. So these are absurd decisions taken by the former government, which has to be corrected. I think this case is gone to CID. I think they should take action on this. And this is the best thing had happened to tourism. That was worse than COVID. It was like closed down because no visas. You know that, even the business visas. And it's a very, I should say, very corrupt deal. And I think CID should go on investigation and charge them.
So, Chandra, in your opinion, how much money would Sri Lanka would have lost because of this VFS deal that took place in the country?
$28 million.
$28 million.
$128
million. So it's only that up to now. It continued. If you didn't find a solution about 3 days back, we got the decision.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you would have lost all Christmas crowd coming to Sri Lanka. How can you come and wait in a queue like that for another thing they did, very bad thing. They allowed free visas until 31st March. Cabinet paper was passed, but it was not gone to Parliament. Can you believe now? Only the Parliament decision, you can't get that free visa. So where all the countries are having free visas now. So it was up to 31st of March, and a lot of people are very happy about, not about saving $50, but it's the hassle.
So, Chandra, are you expressing a sigh of relief that it was Anurukumar Dissanayake who was appointed as the 9th executive president and not anyone else?
I think for saving low-hanging fruits, yes. Because all people who have been in tourism not done anything. They are not listening to us. We have sent so many letters until people have gone, I mean, 5 of our associations have gone to courts. Where the country travel agents associations are going against the courts. The government, the decisions, cabinet decisions. So it's very unfortunate situation.
So Chandra, last week on the show we spoke about the tourism promotion that was supposed to be launched in Sri Lanka. I recollect we had a campaign which said, "Come back for more." However, the Slighter representative who was here said that was not a fully fledged campaign. Do you have any thoughts about the next campaign that is supposed to be launched? Because most of the companies are saying that it is important to have a tourism promotion campaign. Do you think that the administration has to step up and accelerate that program right now?
Yeah, I think it's been set up to do a digital campaign, which is ideal at the moment to go ahead with digital campaign, whether it's come back for more or Shining Sri Lanka or anything else. It's not the tagline, it's the promotion to public opinion, because you know that every newspaper say Marxist government, bloodbath, this and that after the election. So that's the image that a lot of foreigners and the foreign embassies also had. I know that all our tour operators are very happy because nothing had happened. Post-election violence, zero. That's also we have to give credit to the president or the new government, because if it would have been another party, still they must be dancing and having kiribat and crackers all over week. So it's not happening. So this is a different political culture. I think we never expected. For my 70 years, I have never seen things like that. So this is a good change for me. Other thing is corruption. Extremely important to stop the corruption and easy to do business. I mean, you open a hotel, open a hotel project or whatever it is, it's incredibly difficult. Very, very difficult.
Right. Thank you very much, Chandra Wickramasinghe, Chairman of Theme Resort Sri Lanka. Now move my attention towards Rohantha Athukorala, former Chairman EDB and Sri Lanka Tourism. Rohantha, I want to ask you a question not related to the subjects that I spoke of with regard to Export Development Board of Sri Lanka Tourism. I want to ask you a question related to a video that I saw on Facebook just a couple of days ago about a girl who is in school and has not had the morning meal or the afternoon meal. And when she was questioned by the teacher as to what she ate, she says that her mother gave her a bottle of water with sugar so that she won't get gastritis. So this is the state in which our politicians have taken this country to, Rohantha. What do you have to tell this government in power? Because a lot of expectations, a lot on their shoulders. Anukumar Dissanayake, as Chandra said, has been appointed as the president after so much of struggles that we have seen in the country as well. What do you have to tell the government in power?
Thank you, Shamir, for the invite. Yeah, I mean, I think it's a very tough task, but I think the good news is that all the top 4 brands saw the reality. If you look at the last 4 months from when the campaign started, all of their campaigns, you had huge promises that were being made, but then, you know, some people got stoned at meetings, some people got hooted, and suddenly all the 4 brands suddenly realized that there's 83% of people whose income is lesser than the expenditure. And that reality many didn't know, Shamir. And even though we have discussed this at this program, some of us have written to the papers about this, it was never taken into account. And I think the best thing that has happened to this country is when the top 4 brands realized that 83% of the people are in absolute poverty. And it so happened that if you look at the brand that just got exited, the guys got 17%. And that's exactly the 17% who said that their income is more than their expenditure. So there is, the dots are connecting. That's point 1. And
the new government must also understand that it's not only just maybe the vote that was got, which was 43%, but they must also understand a little bit of details for these numbers. Because if you look at the exit poll, Shamir, exit poll was 28% to Brian AKD. And there was about 25% who had not yet decided to vote. So when he got 43%, that vote that came in was a swing in the last 3-4 days, which some people call it the protest vote. Now, if you were to have this election again, you won't get 43%. So now you have a huge...
Are you saying it's going to be more or lesser?
It will be lesser.
Why do you say
So, because when you analyze the psyche of that voter or the consumer, you realize that even the 3.3 million that was won by RW and SJB together, or RW and others together, 3.3 million, if you look at the Mana pace that was got to the first two brands, was only 300,000. Which means that the people who voted for outside the first two was very, very focused on solus user. We call it solus user. They are very clear on one person.
Yeah, but Rohantha, if you look at the history of Sri Lanka, look at where the politicians have taken us into. We thought right after the end of the conflict there was an opportunity for Sri Lanka to raise its head again, but it never happened. There was so much of corruption. 2015, the Yahapalne government came into play.
Yeah.
What did they do? Nothing. They promised hell and high water, but nothing happened concretely in terms of getting the corrupt prosecuted. 2019, after the Easter bombings happened on the 21st of April, there was change again. The nationalistic rhetoric started taking center stage. As a result of that, Gotabaya Rajapaksa was elected. A lot of expectations again, but nothing happened. When you see the activities of Anura Kumara Dissanayake right now, you see a little bit of 2015 Yahapalne government, where you saw how vehicles were parked outside, and then when you see 2019, right after Gotabaya Rajapaksa was elected to power, he was going to the Manning Market, he was going to locations that where he got some publicity. We see that as well. So a little bit of both we see with Anura Kumara Dissanayake as well. In terms of giving him a message, what would that message be?
Understand that out of that 83% of the people, 73% are having 2 meals per day. And if you are not going to address that issue immediately, it will be absolute disaster when it comes to the November elections. And if by chance you don't get that mandate, then what happens is, how do you run the country if you want to pass cutting edge
what you're saying
legislature?
Is that the cost of living issue is the primary
number one priority issue. Now, today I was having a discussion with a few people who are like the clerical staff, and I said, what is your view? And there's some very interesting thoughts came in. First they said the price of eggs have reduced. Number two, they said the price of vegetables have come down. Number three, all the school principals have been told you can't ask for money from a child.
That's very good.
Now, these are real consumer views.
Yeah, the price of rice is now being sold at controlled prices as well.
Okay. So, Shamir, the answer to your question is that we see a proper objective analysis and direction happening in the last 1 week to 1.5 weeks. Now the question is, how do you maintain and sustain this in the next 1 to 2 months is the most important thing. Because if you don't maintain, what happens is, if the elections, as I told you Shamir, 28% was the exit poll, not 43. And now if you don't move that arm from 43, because you're going with unbranded people who are not known are going into that elections, vis-a-vis your competitors who are having all brands. How do you get this consumer to come and vote for you?
But right now, Rohantha, don't you think there is a wave? Because whoever voted in favor of Ranil Wickramasinghe or the SJB at the last election will not vote in favor of them again at the next election. because they already know that some progressive steps are being taken by Anurukumara Dissanayake right now, 10 days into the job. It's too early. They say it's a honeymoon period right now, but it's still too early. But they've already switched to vote a change on the 14th of November. Just putting into perspective, from the 225 members who are now in Parliament, do you think at least 150 of them would be out this time around?
Definitely. I mean, it's very clear when you have a person who was governing get 17%, who turned around a country which was in absolute disaster, which also meant that the voter is very mature. So my point, what I'm saying is that you can't just rely on your laurels because you got 43%, because this consumer who goes into vote in the month of November is also very mature, and he says, I'm prepared to switch, and they'll switch very quickly. And now there is no color, there is no name. The consumers got so mature in the last 3-4 years because they have got so many shocks. Starting from 2015, like you said, Shamir, into the 2019, the Easter attacks. Then you had the, saying that I'll be the best president in Sri Lanka in 2021. And then you had the economic crisis. The consumers got so mature that if you don't sustain, you're going to have an attack on the 21st. And then, of course, the question is, how do you drive all the policy changes that were promised when you don't have a mandate in Parliament?
So I have a question for Mr. Jayaratne. I'm getting a lot of questions already, so I'm going to pose this question to Mr. Jayaratne because he spoke about this earlier on in his opening remarks. Mr. Jayaratne, you said that the decisions that are being taken by Anurukumara Dissanayake should not be taken haphazardly. However, if you look at the appointments that he made with the Treasury Secretary and even having the central bank governor maintain that position, don't you think these are steps in the right direction?
They are the right directions, but the right directions must continue. Now, it is only possible for him to continue to do this. I would agree with the good, all the good things that have been said, with the exception that nobody mentioned what happened in court. That court decision by that team in the Supreme Court, who stood by their thing and didn't stand no nonsense that the law has said you have to do it. And people who said wanted 2 months at the beginning of the court case, that morning, within few hours was saying, okay, we'll do it in 2 days. Because I think a message has gone down to the executive. Do the right thing. Don't do what somebody else tells you to do. Don't be a... So I would think that we have got a very good base being built by the judiciary too.
Yeah, because if you look at Mr. Jayaratne, the steps that Anurukumara Dissanayake took, Ranil Wickramasinghe did not appoint an acting IGP even after the court said to do so. He said that he's not going to do that because they're coming in for election, and he gave a lot of reasons, ample reasons not to do it. But Anurukumara Dissanayake, within 5 days after being appointed, he appointed an acting IGP as well. So he's taking steps in the right direction, isn't he not?
He is, but the real challenges will come not after these elections, but you're talking about 100 days. Give me just 2 minutes. Look at 3 things that have to be done. We have to have the debt restructure, consistent growth, narrowing the gap. That's what you said, right? That's absolutely necessary. Balance international relations with strict non-alignment. Third one is change management, where he has promised a socio-economic, political culture, changing the people's attitudes, values and norms. Very important. But these can't be moved by the slow, small things. They are very strong, long term. Will he have just 1 minute only, will he have the people of capacity to do it? Will there be internal conflicts between the people who have supported him, because his own cadres, opposition, youth, everybody, the mixed bag of people who have all come together, understanding the consumer expectations of him and managing it in the long term's interests is my question. Sorry.
Yeah, Mr. Jayaratne, now just want to ask about the AKD's main promise is about busting the corruption, right? So he wants to eliminate corruption, and then he wants to reduce taxes. He wants to give more concessions, subsidies, and he wants to basically recover all the taxes that were not paid. Now, within this context, plus the IMF deal and the debt restructuring, what is the space he has to maneuver the economy?
Very limited in the longer term. So he has to do, not getting one thing right, he has to get, I think, about 15 things that I wrote down coming for this place that he has to get right and manage. Manage them with the conflicts, with the demands, with the pressures he's going to get, and with the quality of the team that is going to be there to take him across this journey.
Do you see another economic crisis coming, another vicious cycle?
Whoever would have come, my predictions have been whoever would have come into power, we would hit another economic crisis within the next 3 years.
So are you trying to say that we may declare bankruptcy again in 2028 when we start paying our loans back?
Not only that, can I give you one question now? Dhananath praised the doing of the debt restructure. Now the debt restructure, people might be getting off with 7% haircut, whilst our workers from tea pluckers to general managers have lost 40 to 48% according to two calculations that I have seen on their earnings capacity. Now, he has to also give a recompense. Now, these are issues that will come very soon when 2.9 million people realize that they have been duped in the interest of keeping us all continuing in governance and continuing the good way, private sector to go on. Now, can there be a revolt by them? I mean, I see a lot of, this is what I'm saying, it's a wonderful opportunity to change. That is the best part, that there is a commitment to change. But change requires change management expertise, which requires certain qualities like motivation, bringing people together, communicating. That's why I gave my example. I mean, if you have a wide and varied lot of people, some who are going to pull you down, some who are going to push you, some who are going to demand more, the trade unions that have been demanding things of him, his own cadres who have been waiting for the last 30, 40 years of supporting, will they be happy with the middle way that signals that are being given? I don't know. So it is, he said he's not a magician.
But that's all subjective, isn't it, not Mr. Jayaratne? Because
it is subjective. But
we have not seen this really taking center stage yet. So it's very hypothetical, it's very subjective.
Because you are only focusing the 100 days or the next election in your whole drive today. To me, I'm gone beyond that. I've gone to what will happen in 2028 is the earliest time that I would focus between now and the 2028 when the debt becomes payable. When we have to pay the percentage of GDP towards the debt service.
So, Dhananath, just to get your thoughts on this. Now, we all know that Anurukumar Dissanayake came to power with the anti-corruption rhetoric. He said that he's going to fight corruption, he's going to prosecute those who have had a bad track record. We saw the manner in which Vijay Herat spoke about the central bank bond controversy as well, that Chandra Wickramasinghe is not immune anymore, that they would take steps to address these issues. In terms of their priority list, now Mr. Jayaratne said that he's not looking at the next 2 months, but he's looking at beyond that point. But if you're looking beyond that point, this anti-corruption rhetoric won't save him the day, would it?
Absolutely, Shamir. It is very important that he goes with the anti-corruption narrative and take the actions. But what we need to understand is anti-corruption narrative won't save the country from the next default. Because it's like playing a cricket game. Like in cricket, just because you defend your wicket doesn't mean that you're going to win the game. You have to surpass the opposition team's score. For that, your mentality is different. For that, you have to take some risks, you have to play aggressively, you have to score runs. Just because you defend your wicket, not out, doesn't mean that you win the game. So here, but it doesn't mean that you have to throw away your wicket as well. You have to keep your wicket, but your mindset is completely different. So anti-corruption narrative rhetoric is very important, taking action is critically important, but it won't save us from the next default. And I agree with Mr. Jayaratne. What I meant was, within that 100 days, you have to bring the hard reforms in, because the truth is, Shamir, these reforms are painful for any segment, because no one would like to get these reforms done. So he won't be able to sustain after the 100 days, because if he try to do it after the 100 days, once the honeymoon period is over, then you get the resistance. Then the change management becomes much more difficult. So he has to bring the tough ones now, because now it's at the honeymoon, people are happy, he has get some brownie points at the beginning, he has resolved the VFS, like the visa issue, no one is going against that, so that's important. Also, I think I missed one point which I think Rohantha brought out on the cost of living, but what I meant was why we should not allow the central bank act to reverse is for the same reason, because the reason why the prices are coming down, now we have deflation and the vegetable prices have come down, that is mainly because of the monetary policy, because always inflation is a monetary phenomenon. If the central bank start printing money, we are out from this game. And that's how I agree with Mr. Jayaratne. When you do too many giveaways, you are risking yourself to amend that act. Because when you give too much things, you can only recover by two ways. Either you have to increase taxes, which is unpopular, you cannot do. You are already at the extreme threshold, 36% pay tax. Where are you going to increase that? 25%, 30% corporate tax. You cannot. 18% VAT, so you cannot increase the taxes. Then either you have to borrow money. You cannot also borrow too much money, because you already are bound with the IMF guidelines. Then what is the option? You are pushing yourself to tweak that act and print money. That is also a way of borrowing money, but you are increasing the cost of living.
So, Mr. Jayaratne, we have a question for you from one of our viewers with regard to one of the appointments that has been made. So the President went on to appoint the sitting chairman of the Ceylon Chamber of Commerce as his advisor. Isn't this conflict of interest?
No, if he has sufficient trust in and that he will bring to the table the voice of the private sector through him, I think it is to that degree. I'm not looking at an individual. The office of that holder represents a significant part of the growth of this country, but there are others who will represent other segments, I presume. So the business segment, presumably he will represent that voice in his table, where he can be guided by that voice. So I think that is a good move. If
so, Chandra, Dhananath said that right now there is a bitter pill to swallow, even after we've seen some very difficult months during the Ranil Wickramasinghe administration, like the corporate tax coming at 30%, the VAT being increased to 18%, the pay tax coming at 36%. People really suffered. And as a result of that, the 17% that Ranil Wickramasinghe took at the last election bears testament that the people have, at least 83% of the public have completely rejected him because of the fact that the cost of living was very, very high. A bitter pill to swallow. Do you think that Anurukumar Dissanayake has to go on that path, even though there is an election on the 14th of November?
I think bitter pill to follow has to be followed by the politicians also. This is what has not happened earlier. Politicians, they call all their perks and everything. That's what people are. There is no even budget. Even if you say take for instance defense budget of Sri Lanka. 2008-2009 we spent about 177 billion rupees. To 2023, 539 billion on defense. You think people don't understand this? You think this country, after spending all those things, after the war, I mean, there have been worst attack by ISIS or whatever the Easter Sunday attack. So I think what's the use
But
of
in the government's defense, Mr. Wickramasinghe, this is the Minister of Defense has been amalgamated with the Ministry of Urban Development as well and Economic Reform.
I don't know.
As a result of that, only the threshold has really gone up. It's not that only defense alone has increased by 100%.
I think it's increased by.
It has increased.
It's increased
there's
lot.
No doubt about it.
Lot when there is no war. I think we all thought when the war is over, match is over for us. I think for us, it's the development. If you see, all the development projects came in after the war is over. Let us know where it can go.
But
so, Mr. Wickramasinghe,
only tourism.
Your point is apparently that we need to take a hard look at the defense budget as well.
Of course, not only that, taxing professionals. These tuition masters, doctors, private practitioners, lawyers, you think they have good tax files? So you have to take from everybody, not from the executives, from the companies. Now a lot of people from us are leaving because they don't want to pay 36%. Some are asking for food rations, the top executives. So this is the truth of the country. So I think bitter pill should go to everybody.
Rohantha, I want to ask this question because you made a very good observation on the percentage of the votes, right? And you said that it would have been less now than 43%. Now, since the election, we have seen, some of the promises are being, made into reality, whereas, the fuel prices, they in the stage they said like we will reduce all the taxes, which is, not practicable, practicable at all. And then they said, within 48 hours, they will arrest somebody, they will bring Arjuna Mahendran, right? These were kind of rhetoric statement they made. How do you see the perception and the image of the public of AKD and the team now compared to what it was during the election?
See, at least as of now, it is positive. From the little research we do, exploratory, it's coming strong. But now the question is that one has to sustain this till the 14th of November. You're talking about 40 days.
Yeah, I'm asking this question because the expectation was to kind of, arrest this, corrupt politicians, corrupt government officials, and they name people, during the election campaign, right? Nothing has happened so far. I mean, it's too early and only 10 days, right? So this is the same scenario that happened during Yahapalne, right? They promised a lot, they created that expectation, and then they lost, right? They didn't do anything. They arrested, but they couldn't do anything other than, arresting, right? So do you see a similar situation?
See, all I know is that a typical consumer, a voter, has not matured out, Shyam. So now this 40 days is absolutely important because all your competitors are drumming that same story which you're saying. They said, lovely, why don't you catch me now? One person has challenged today in the paper.
Exactly.
And said, you guys said, no, there are billions in Uganda or someplace, catch me. So now the game is wide open. So unless the current brand continues this, you're going to have a huge challenge on the 14th of November. And if November 14 doesn't hold favor, how do you do your cutting edge bills? So whilst we right now are kind of happy that the stock market is picking up, we know that the cost of living is somewhat down, we know that the stability is somewhat maintained on the policy front because you have a central bank governor and the head of treasury the same, and overall organization structure of the public sector is intact as we speak. The question is that if you are going to drive this change in the next 40 days, you have to do it with your public sector.
Now the question is, Rohantha, as Mr. Jayaratne said, as Dhananath said, we have to look beyond November 14. It's not about looking at November 14th and trying to win an election. Is it not, Mr. Jayaratne? We have to look beyond this. Now, as you said, catch me if you can before the 14th of November. That's not going to work. the Sri Lankan judicial system doesn't allow anyone to be arrested and prosecuted within 40 days. That's never going to happen, Rohantha. So, but if you're looking at beyond the 14th of November, what must he look at? It's not about an election that he has to win.
Absolutely. Shamin, if it's above 14th of November, the first key initiative is how do I drive my exports to India? Because currently under the FTA, your exports are only 500 million. In 2004, it was 500 million. So here is a country which has given us $4 or $5 billion. Okay, they have invested so much in different parts of the country, and now we have to take away the non-tariff barriers which are political in nature. It's not economic. So unless there is a head of state initiatives with the head of state of India, and you have certain structural changes happening on the non-tariff barrier, if you can drive these exports to 4 billion, because end of the day we have what, 15,000 kilograms of tea, we have about 7 million pieces of apparel going in as per the FTA, the utilization is like 2.73%. So if you ask me, above 14 days, very clear cut, what is the key action? Number one is driving that export.
So Mr. Jayaratne, Rohantha says that driving exports is a must. We spoke about the SWAT a couple of minutes ago. When approached by the export community, Ranil Wickramasinghe had told the export members, the stakeholders, that they should consult the IMF because this was a regulation put forward by the IMF. How hard do you think that the Anurukumar Dissanayake administration should fight on behalf of the export community in Sri Lanka on this SWAT problem?
Not on the behalf of the export community, on behalf of Sri Lanka, if you take away the SWAT. Because we have to understand, till such time as our digital action and our IRD and our customs are not integrated and fully into a state, doing a SWAT is denying Sri Lanka of the way forward out of debt. That's for sure. Right?
So then this comes
the problem here is that we have to explain this properly. The people who come from New York or Canada, as the expert who has come and wanted this done, he has been the Minister of Finance in Canada.
And there it works very well.
Absolutely.
You can
so
get
you
the
have to
prepayments
understand
without a
our
problem.
situation, and knowing this situation, doing a SWAT away is not to save exporters, it is to save Sri Lanka. So I can give you one of the largest exporters, this country, ties up 8 billion rupees every month. It's not paid. No, you think he's going to keep his business here? He'll transfer it to outside of this country. Why should he keep 8 billion rupees with interest rates going up? You think anybody is going to wait?
Dhananath, we hear and we see about this, prices, particularly the essentials, right? And we have seen in the past that when governments try to control the prices through Consumer Affairs Authority, and there's a flourishing black market, and then the product goes down, or it's hidden in black markets, and then suddenly it emerge after prices are increased. Do you see the same situation like price control in under this government? Because we see people are talking, people actually want this, right? Because they are suffered of this prices, high prices, right, and high cost of living because there is no control. How do you see this?
Yeah, I think we spoke about a lot of things that the current president should do. One thing he should not do is imposing price controls, because price controls won't bring down prices. And it is not only about essential goods, even like the room rates for hotels. I do not agree with those price ceilings or price controls, because definitely it will create black markets. And the reason why the prices are coming down, not because of the price controls, it is the market forces that is working. And sometimes because of the demand and supply it goes up. That is basically allocating the resources accordingly. Now, one example is, let's say, the egg prices, which has come down. Now, what made first the egg prices go up? That is the very price control that we impose. Because when we impose the price control, the poultry industry, they didn't. It wasn't beneficial for them to sell that eggs at that price. So what they did was they basically killed their layer chicken and basically sold it for meat. And now you have a massive issue because you now cannot generate enough eggs because you have already, because to sustain your farms you have to do it. And on the other front, we imposed the price control on eggs, and now especially when the tourism is picking up, the demand for eggs and chicken is basically going up. So now after some time, now they bought the eggs and now the supply is better, now the prices are coming down. So do not impose price. I give two things. Again, in Sinhala you call vandala illana. So worship and say, don't print money, don't reverse the central bank act, do not impose price controls, because that will cause a lot of market distortions and the same president has to face for the consequences. I think the same thing happened when we imposed sugar price controls and when we impose like those tariff issues, because one thing is you open it for corruption, second thing is you wiped out all the small and medium guys from the market by imposing that. So never ever do it. Same for the hotels, because as we know, for the I do not know whether Chandra will agree with me, because
I'm against
the price. Exactly. See, because our room inventory is mainly supplied by the small and medium entrepreneurs. They are the one who are coming to booking.com and Agoda, and that's how, because if you are not a big guy, if you have only 5-10 rooms, there's no way that you can market your property. That is through the network. So if you have a price control, you are basically hampering that guy to go out from the market. You are basically against the...
Mr. Wickramasinghe, we are now coming into the tourist season in December. So right after the general election, where of course we will see the travel advisories and the usual stuff when an election comes. But then the election ends and hopefully there will be no violence, and then we have the tourist season coming in. Do you have high hopes for this?
I have very high hopes. I'm telling you, from now, from December until next March, can you get me 5 rooms on the beach or in one of our hotels? Everything is packed, right?
Fully booked.
Fully booked, overbooked. I'm looking for tour guides. It's come to matter that I have to go and guide some groups because there are no French-speaking enough guides in Sri Lanka. So much of people want to come to Sri Lanka because after COVID, there's a big boom for this kind of islands. So that is happening now. There is nothing to worry about it. I don't think election, but one election they have predicted a lot of violence and this and that and all this, like that not happen. I think that's all how they handle their own people, how they behave. I think we always thought like after these guys will come back, then they are talking about old history, they will go and burn, they will go and kill this guy, that guy. Nothing had happened.
No, but Mr. Jayaratne is a little bit pessimistic. He's saying that the old guard
this old guard, all the old, I mean, I'm telling you,
situation will be worse.
Yeah, you didn't have old guards with these old parties. They also have old guards. They had their own children. They had given armies and all this to control the country. So that is happening. But if it happens for good, it's good, right? It had been started from JR's time. You know, these armies and STFs and all the who led the STF.
So Chandra, you say that the rooms have been booked from December to March next year.
Yeah.
So my question to you is, what's the target for Sri Lanka in terms of tourism in 2025? Do we have a number?
I think we might go to about 2.8 million, less than 3 million from next January to end of December. We might get 3 million.
Right.
In terms of revenue?
Revenue also we might hit 5 million, $6 million.
$5 billion.
$5 billion to $6 billion. I'm sure if you control the what do you call the informal sector, informal foreign sector, we'll get more dollars.
So Chandra, last week when we spoke to one of your representatives, he did not give a clear-cut answer for this. So I'm going to pose this question to you as well. Most of the tourists are traveling to countries like Malaysia and even Singapore for that matter, in terms of shopping, they find Sri Lanka still a very expensive destination to shop in terms of buying luxury goods. Must we as a nation look at this as well? Because who we attract to our country as a nation is not the high rollers or the high spenders. Is that sentiment true?
Yeah, this shopping is not the only reason or what is lacking in the country. What is lacking in the country to get the high-end tourists? We don't have private beaches. We don't have private islands. If you go to Costa Rica, you have your private rainforest. We don't have anything. We don't have even a small bungalow inside the island. Nobody can take. We don't have rainforest. Like if you go to Costa Rica, you have private rainforest. Only we have private tea estates, but that's also not belongs to this is that full of people. So we don't have privacy to go into that high-end market. But even in shopping now, you talk about shopping, I think you get clothes in Europe cheaper than here, cheaper than Dubai. I was in Dubai last, I didn't buy anything. But people are buying online now because Dubai shopping malls are so expensive. Some people just go there for fashion and they do shopping. And shopping means Sri Lanka. I think if you go to any gem shop in Kandy and all these people, they are doing well. They buy things. We also know that all these guys, shopping is needed, but shopping for international, so they've opened a duty-free shopping center in Port City. Yeah, so they will come on. I mean, this big shopping mall, Gold Phase 1. And the problem is, we have not done.
So Chandra, we have right now approximately 25,000 to 100,000 hotel rooms in the country to cater to approximately 3 million.
Yeah.
If we are to increase this to 4 million, how much of hotel rooms should be built in the country?
I think we can do it with the same number of hotels. We have about more than 100,000 hotel rooms now. But when coming back to shopping, I think Colombo must be the should be. Last time also we argued on this. On city tourism, shopping is not the only reason for them to come.
No, Chandra. One of the high spending segments is families, because when you travel with children, you tend to spend a lot. But we don't find very many children coming as tourists. Families.
That. Now July, August, if you see, all our hotels have quadruple rooms with attic rooms, and all are the first to.
So that's a growing segment.
Growing segment.
But is there enough for them to do? As in, we don't have theme parks.
I don't think French person coming from there is looking for a theme park here. No, it's a dream. It's a dream of certain people. Some ministers come and say, we want prostitution, we want casinos, we want this. It's not the common tourist who looking for Sri Lanka is not looking at a casino and booking. Maybe Indians. Maybe young Indians come for 2-3 days, right? So I'm talking about tourists who are spending about 10 days here. That are the people who are going round, who's having a multiple effect on tourism.
So Dhananath, I'm getting a lot of questions on this debt restructuring and all that. I want to pose this question to Mr. Jayaratne and Dhananath both. Excessive unsustainable expenditure has led to excessive unsustainable debt. No mention of how such expenditure will be rationalized over a period of time, like the debt repayment that has been postponed. The citizens wonder how the IMF did a diagnostic on vulnerability to corruption and no plan to manage expenditure. After all, debt comes from borrowing to fund ostensibly unjustifiable expenditure. Can you explain on this?
So to answer that question, Shamir, we need to understand the composition of our expenditure. Simply, our total expenditure in 2023 approximately about 5 trillion. Out of that, 50% is the interest cost, like the interest payment. 2.5 trillion was interest. So that is from the accumulated debt, only the interest, not the debt servicing, only for the interest. So when even whoever who comes and say you cut down your expenditure, 50% of the expenditure you have no choice. As interest you have to pay. Then you have defense, then you have healthcare, then you have education, and there's very limited room that you can cut. But again, I think it's important that the politicians take a hit and give that direction, or they set the example at the top, say they set the tone at the top, that we are also willing for some sacrifice.
Not using posh vehicles.
Exactly. So, but it doesn't mean that by only cutting their expenditure will bring down the entire expenditure drastically. It's just a fraction. But it sets the right tone for people. That's number one. Number two is now on cutting down expenditure, we have to cut down now the vehicles issue. And
107 vehicles, private employees of the president.
Absolutely. That and let's say the defense, which Mr. Chandra brought out. Now those are basically the consequences of a large state sector. Now the vehicles, when you have 107 vehicles, look at how the expenditure adds up. For that you need to have 107 minimum drivers or even more than that, because you have to run on a roster. Some of those vehicles are in a pool, and all those 107 vehicles need to get insurance. Their revenue license has to be renewed, and it will have maintenance cost, it will have fuel cost. So when you add that, it basically multiplies exponentially.
So Mr. Jayaratne in fact told a press briefing and the cabinet media briefing that if they use the bulletproof vehicles that has been given to ministers, one tire costs 5 million.
Yes.
So that's 4 into 20,
absolutely
20 million.
So that's how the government expenditure basically exponentially goes up. So the only way that you can cut it down is you contract the government sector, which is not popular. That was the hard pill that I was talking about. That was the hard pill, because that has to happen. When you cut it down, you cannot say, okay, you don't use the vehicle and all that. You have to basically bring down that 1.3 million cadre. You have to let go some people.
So, Mr. Jayaratne, if you look at...
I can answer one point on what was asked by you and then come to whatever your second. I have had this argument with Shamini Kure, who has given the reasons in a note and explanation. Her thing is that why didn't they look at expenditure in IMF program? Because IMF looks at global GDP to expenditure, and we are well within the global average, right? But the global average adds value. Here what happens is our expenditure, though it is 9% to GDP or something, some other figure that I can't remember the exact figure she argued, is not adding value. That is the problem. So we have to start cutting that. Though the IMF didn't ask, we should understand if there are no value, you have to improve value. Now change management is not only reducing, it is reskilling those people for productive work which adds value. Now that is where, and the other thing is 100 days example I'd like you to take. 2015, we made a big
disaster.
mistake. 2019, bigger disaster. Now, are we going to do that with you people also focusing on 100 days? Please, message tonight to our listeners that 100 days is not. This government must go on for 10 years. Let them not focus on 100 days. Tell our people not to focus on 100 days, but 100 years.
We didn't say about 100 days, but Dhananath said about 100 days.
No, my point was, let me clarify, what I said was...
But to get to 10 years, you need to first get past that 100 days.
Don't do the right stuff at the 100 days. Even if you look at the Yahapalana government, even whatever the little thing that they got done was only with what they did within that 100 days, the RTI Act and whatever material. So my point was not to think about like after the 100 days, to think about beyond the 100 days, you have to get the bitter pills within the 100 days. That's where the honeymoon everyone...
Just a minute. I'm trying to get all these questions from our viewers who are watching the show tonight as much as possible. So this is also, I'll come back to you, Rohantha, also, don't worry. You've been silent for some time. But I'm trying to get these questions as much as possible to Ms. Jayaratne as well as Dhananath. From 1970s to 2005, Sri Lanka had been taking loans from Japan at very low interest rates. They had a transparency in providing loans. Since they granted us loans in yen, it didn't affect the depreciation of the LKR against the USD as well. But China grants us loans in USD. Our foreign political leaders selected China to get loans since there were a lack of transparency which supports them to go for hidden deals. But this new government works very transparently, minimizing wastage, and their perception is to build the country at a zero level of corruption. So would it be possible for Sri Lanka to come to an agreement with Japan again in order to get loans at least after the coming election, instead of going for sovereign bonds at high interest rates?
So Shamir, the context is where we got the concessionary loans from 1975 till about 2002-2003. That was when we were when we were not a middle income country, because
we were lower income.
When we were a lower income country, we had the access for low interest, long maturity debt. And that was no longer when we got the market access. That's how the Japanese and the bilateral credit percentage went down, and then we moved to the markets, and that's where we tried to borrow mainly from the Exim Bank and the the commercial markets, and that's how it happened. Now, even since we are a middle income country, we will not have the same access as from Japan and the bilateral creditors at those interest rates in moving forward. So while I would like to have that option, we all would like to have that option, that's no longer feasible.
Mr. Jayaratne, you have been talking about this corruption and governance. Now, this president and his party is very much on anti-corruption moves, and they want to eliminate corruption. I mean, can you quantify, by reducing or eliminating corruption, how much we can save or how much we can contribute to the economy?
Well, there is a paper I have written some time ago in which I say about 4% of GDP may be able to be saved if you take the total amount of the corruption that is taking place annually.
In terms of numbers, Mr. Jayaratne,
well, it is about, I think, $4 billion was my estimate.
So 4% means 4% of the 80 billion, right?
Yeah. It was
3.2 billion. Yeah.
On that same respect, I'm getting a lot of questions. I'm trying to do justice to the two people of
give me 1 second. Give me 1 second.
On this corruption itself, Shar,
go ahead. Go ahead.
Yeah. So on this corruption itself, how do you think the NPP will move forward and resolve the ongoing Express Pearl claim, which is also a lot of money, the alleged value of which could exceed the IMF's EFF as well?
That is one. That at least has not been investigated, right? There are investigated files which I do not want to talk about, which have been there and known to the people in 2015 downwards. Sri Lankan Airlines, everybody knows.
I'm just the Airbus industry.
Yeah.
I
can't talk anything more because I have been the person who wrote the report. So I only can say that report has enough to collect.
Mr. I just want to ask you this question. I've always wanted to ask you this question, but I've not got the opportunity. Even the last time you were on the show, I was not in the country, unfortunately. When I watched the show, what begged me to ask this question was, you were very active in terms of the anti-corruption drive that took place in the country between 2015 and 2019. Tell the people what really went wrong. Because if you look at those files, now you spoke about Sri Lankan Airlines for an example, nothing has come out. No one knows what is going on. It's very, very sad. It's in your heart, it's in your mind. One day, Mr. Jayaratne, when all of us are dead and gone, this would also go with you to the burial ground. So at least for the people to understand what really went wrong with all these investigations.
Yeah, I could say there is no political commitment. That was what it was. Let's leave the corruption part out. We paid for the cancellation $178 million for the cancellation. Now,
and got it back.
We didn't get it back.
No, not that money. Got it back for they lease it out the same thing from somebody else.
Well, for the cancellation we paid $178 million. When the transaction is void ab initio by bribery, that $178 million which we paid to Airbus is recoverable, right? Well, Attorney General was moved, papers were, there are papers with London people who could have sued it in London, but from 2015 till 10 years later, we are still not, that file is somewhere down in, I won't tell you the reality, the file is.
And also, we know our legal system takes a long time, but the Airbus industry is based in France. So you would have a...
No, I'm not talking about the claim, you're talking about claims extra.
Yeah.
I'm saying what we paid
Yes.
is, they can't take it in because its transaction has been declared void by their own country. So that must be clear. Forget claims for the frauds, claims for selling us things, selling us planes without...
which we don't need.
No, not only that. When somebody wanted to get the commission early, they said, send any bloody plane that is there. We got a plane which was not able to fly from here to London and back fully. Everybody knows this. Right? It is there in the reports.
Ms. Jayaratne, you get one opportunity to reveal details of this deal. What would those startling revelations be?
That's not the only startling revelation.
No, talk about the Sri Lankan
all the files are supposed to be in a Unit 5 of the CID. So let them go. They know all the files that were...
You're also talking about files now.
10 years, they have not done anything, Mr. Jayaratne. At least take this opportunity today, face the nation, tell us.
I'm signed up on a confidentiality agreement. I'll be the one to go to jail. They know where the files are. I know where the files are.
Rohantha, this is the biggest problem in Sri Lanka.
Even the Easter Sunday attack, right? We had information about the conversion of some cryptocurrency, which was passed down. Till today, no word has been mentioned about the cryptocurrency which the Israelis found and gave Sri Lankan the information. Never come in any of our things. What was the cryptocurrency cashed and sent to Sri Lanka for what?
So, Rohantha, isn't this the problem in Sri Lanka? Look at the issues that we are facing at present. Look at the revelations that Mr. Jayaratne is making. Look at what Dhananath is saying. All these politicians have taken us on this slippery slope for a long time. What must the people look at when they go on the 14th of November to the polling booth?
I mean, obviously they are going to look at...
Let's forget about the people. What would you do, Rohantha?
I would look at, for the last 1 month, what are the key actions that have been taken, definitely. But I think, Shamil, you also have to understand, I don't know, maybe Dhananath can add value to this. They say that if you want an economy to grow, you have to you have to allow some degree of corruption. There is some economic theory like that. If you tend to tighten the economy, entrepreneurship gets reduced. So I'm saying is that there is some policy kind of a paper that is there in the global template on this. So we need to be a little bit conscious about how much do you tighten the economy versus how much do you allow it to loosen out in terms of driving economy. But Shamil, one area that we forgot to discuss today is SMEs. See, we are always looking at overall in terms of economic growth, we are looking at driving exports, we are looking at tourism. But I think the current government has to look at the small, medium enterprises and how they are going to support them in this whole area of giving working capital and the kinds of loans that they have taken, because they have been hammered on the Easter Sunday attack, they have been hammered on the economic crisis attack in 2022, and they are the actual victims, which is 70% of GDP. So I'm wondering from where do you start is the question.
So yeah, because we are on the subject of corruption now, I just want to ask Mr. Jayaratne. Mr. Jayaratne, you're well aware of the World Bank STAR program with regard to bring back stolen assets or money. In terms of taking this forward, do you have any tips for the government in power?
No, it's a long process. I don't think we should rely upon that, but get the messages across. Few things that can be done without, I mean, if I was, firstly make surcharge. Today, secretaries of ministries, who's the chief accounting officer, cannot be charged, surcharged by the Auditor General. Why can't, I mean, simple things that come, COPE reports, make them justiciable, right?
COPE has been established in 1978, nothing has been done.
So make it
Nothing.
justiciable. Now, I've been trying to, I can tell you one thing, the people who died in the queues of economic crisis, right? I have got police confirmed 9 people out of the 16 people who died have reported. I have been writing to the Human Rights Commission. I have been writing to the Reparations Commission. I have been writing to the Attorney General, who was participant in it's referred to in the economic crisis case. Judges did not make a judgment and say prosecute and or pay them. Reparations, instead when you write, they say it's not within our mandate. Human Rights Commission writes and says it's not within our mandate. Attorney General says it's not within our mandate, having participated in the case, where the judgment talks about the people who died in the case. What about all those people who died in the gas explosions? Don't they deserve? I mean, these are things, low-hanging fruits that somebody was talking that this is what this government
is there
in the 14th to win the election. This is what Mr. Dissanayake should do.
Is there an untouchable class in this country where the Attorney General, the Human Rights Commission or the CID, they simply won't go ahead and prosecute?
The ruling class, yes. Absolutely right.
And do you have any expectations that the new government...
I have expectation that they will change that, but they also must understand that it is a long process. We do not know how to write a...
the government to change, or the people who are involved in these acts to change?
No, the Attorney General's department sometimes don't have the technical capacity. Right? Money laundering cases have been taken, stand down, I don't name a case, standing, our lawyers are paid well, they'll go and argue something else. One standard one, they said how the prices were brought down. How can there be corruption and money laundering if the price of the product has been brought down? Now the judges threw the case out. Price can be brought down. If you are a monopoly, price can be brought down, but money laundering is still happening.
Yeah.
So we need ability to write what is called mutual legal assistance. Not very many people in this country are capable of getting all this information that is required to prosecute. So it's a long game.
Jayaratne, with the NPP, NPP leader Anura Kumar Dissanayake coming into power, does this ruling class relevant anymore?
It is not. It is not. So my hope is that he is the only one who can do it. He is the only one who can do it. But that's why I said he needs a good team. He shouldn't create any more fires by doing wrong things and getting the economy. If he can do the change. Change management, he has the chance to.
If AKD does not deliver on that promise of anti-corruption, is that a deal breaker for the voter? Not in the next election, obviously, but in future elections, would it be? Because with Yahapalana, it was a deal breaker, one of the deal breakers.
I mean, I would say that you will not be able to stay for 4 years. Within 2 years, you will have a revolt. I mean,
like what happened during the Aragal era.
Yeah. I mean, the consumer has changed, Shamil. I mean, the consumer now is very clear, no? I mean, it's the middle income to upper middle income housewife that you have at Kovala Junction and at Timirigasaya every Sunday, protesting. So, and Shamil, one point that we missed out was that the IMF very clearly says there is a 16-point plan on the governance diagnostic analysis that was done. Now, none of those 16 points have been addressed by the former government, and I think if the current government can address those 16 things, like for instance, they're saying declare your income, your tenders have to be put up on the open system, fundamental things. If the current government can implement this, at least before the 14th, it's a big win.
So, Dhananath, in terms of this, in terms of asset declaration, we saw the manner in which how the presidential candidates have declared their assets prior to the elections. We had several members of the SLPP attending the show as well, and I asked them, tell me the manner in which
you're going to ask about that 200 million again.
Yes. How did Namal Rajapaksa, how did presidential candidate Namal Rajapaksa, who is not doing a job, earn 200 million and is earning a 3 million interest rate? I asked this question from the SLPP members and they did not have answers. They said it's not their business to look at what their presidential candidate is doing. which I thought was an appalling answer. But in your opinion, look at the money in which how politicians have made over the years, and look at what innocent people are suffering at the moment. That goes back to the question that I asked Rohantha with regard to this innocent child who has not had 2 meals a day, and the mother is making sure that she does not get gastric by having a glass of water with sugar. Isn't this the state that we should start addressing in the country, Dhananath? Isn't this what we should start looking at this very moment of time? Address the plight of those who are vulnerable.
Absolutely, Shamir. It is the plight that we have to address, but I think the question would be, how are we going to address? I think that would be the critical question, because we all know. So my recommendation is, now on asset declaration, the best way is, rather than finding the people who have stolen money, which is required, but you first ask to declare. As it says, the sunlight is the best disinfectant. When you declare, then it's give a lot of option for people like activists like us to question it, like journalists, because now you have declared. The challenge was first to get it declared. So now that's first step. Now you can ask that, because earlier even you couldn't ask that question because you didn't know. Now at least you can make a logical argument asking, okay, if this is your revenue, if this is your, this is your expenditure, how did you do it? Now it has come to the next stage. But my worry is, now let's take the Sri Lankan Airlines case, many other cases. My kind request to the President is, now you have to minimize the corruption vulnerability. Now when Sri Lankan Airlines, for an example, we have spoken about it too many times. Now he has a hard call. Now the people who died in queues and the small girl that you spoke about, now there's, according to Mr. Jayaratne, 128 million which can be claimed. And just few months ago, we absorbed about 510 million US dollars from the Sri Lankan Airlines balance sheet to the treasury. That is mainly for people.
Losses.
Not losses, basically the debt to make the balance sheet better. So 500 million US dollars means the entire payee taxes for a year, about 150 billion rupees, right? So if the President is going to run the airline, he has a hard choice. Whether I am going to allocate that 150 billion which Rohantha brought out, the poverty and the girl who died at had 2 meals, am I going to employ my resources there, or am I going to employ their resources on an airline which has been corrupt for a long time? And when you move forward, you don't get a clean slate, because for airline to operate, you have to again lease more aircrafts, because airline business is like the hotel business. You have to refurbish the aircrafts. You have to again revamp the aircraft. You have to do so many investments. And when you do that, you may not be corrupt as a political leader, but the people you appoint may cut a deal.
So I'm getting a lot of questions.
So Dhananath, with Sri Lankan Airlines, is it your opinion that that decision that was just taken not to divest it, was it a hasty decision?
I think what they have said is they will hold it till the general election, but I would recommend that do not tap that, because you are inviting unnecessary questions, because one corrupt case will be the end of the credibility of the government, even if the officials do it, because we have created a lot of hope, and what you do is you minimize the corruption vulnerability. Because when you try to do too many things, one person can do something, and then your credibility is gone. You cannot even prosecute rest of the cases, because then they will come and say, look what you did for this, why are you coming behind us?
I'm getting a lot of questions on this corruption, because most of the people who are watching the show tonight are very keen and eager to know. So one person says, not just politicians, all public servants doing regular jobs have to explain how they live in palaces at the end of the day. And then we have a gentleman from Jaffna who's watching the show is saying, why can't the government investigate government officers for corruption, especially income tax officers, customs officers, excise department officers?
Very true, very true. But just give you one, for money laundering, very important is that you must know who the beneficial owner is. Now this new Companies Act amendment has been brought in, where they are exempting. Now, this is supposed to be in line with the diagnostic that they are bringing it in. We have brought it in, exempting anybody who's registered in the port, Colombo port, port city, doesn't have to declare the beneficial owners. So anybody who wants to money launder and have beneficial owners, establish it there.
They are already.
If you are registered in any other country, you don't have to, and you have declared it in that country, you don't have to declare it either. Now Delaware allows orphan trusts, right? So you go to Delaware, put your company there, you declare an orphan trust. They accept an orphan trust. Nobody knows who the ultimate beneficiary is. I mean, are these people who know or who want to comply with diagnostic that is being done?
Now, Ms. Jayaratne, I don't know whether you recollect, but there was a one-time strongman of the UNP who said that they got a donation of $1.5 billion to their account from Belgium. I don't know whether you remember. This was during the Yapalne government, and when he was questioned as to where he got the money, he said it was a donation. And who on earth would give $1.5 billion as donation to a country? It's just laughable matters. And if you look at the $500 million that was paid in 2022 in January, a forensic audit needs to be carried out as to who these recipients were. Because I remember Chamber of Commerce former chairmen and chairmen were featured on Face the Nation in December 2021, and they vehemently told the government not to pay that $500 million for ISB holders at that time. And who got this money? Who were the recipients of this money? These should be investigated, isn't it?
That's very difficult. That particular one is, they allow, you won't be able to very easily get it because this.
It is, but you need to try.
You have to try.
Just because it's difficult, there's nothing lost in trying.
Judge, Mr. Jayaratne, now this government also spoke about this, recovering stolen assets, right? It's one of the key promises, and I saw some tweets from the presidential candidate Namal Rajapaksa asking, challenging the president to kind of, bring back Ugandan money that you accused Rajapaksas of. I mean, can you tell us, the difficulties or the procedure of, bringing these stolen assets?
Yeah, why are you looking at stolen money outside? If you pass the Proceeds of Crime Act, if you have money, all that you have to do is ask you to explain how you got it under that act.
Money and any type of property, vehicles, anything.
Right. Then, if you cannot explain what is called an unexplained wealth order, all that you have to do is issue an unexplained wealth order on you, and the property is seized and is in sequestration. So you have to prove. It's not that we have to prove. You have to prove that how you got the money. It's very simple.
This is actually, I think, part of the IMF agreement that has to be passed.
Yeah, but this act was ready in 2015, right? It was to go to. I signed the papers and gave it to the former president, right? Then he declared the famous the 52-day thing, and that died. So had we had that, all we need to do is, if you have some money, now you are saying about asset declaration, all you don't have to do, you say, you prove it. You issue an unexplained wealth order.
There's a new Proceeds of Crime bill, which now is almost complete.
Has that provision. It has that provision.
And presumably in the next parliament it will be presented.
Now you said you are asking from one person, an MP, declare assets. If he had put his assets different names, okay, not under him, I don't have anything, my wife, my sister, my this and that. That's what's happening in the country today. So how are you going to control that?
Banks have to do it, sir. We have had banks in this country who used to have 0001 to 009. I mean, that's another case. Again, if you want to find it, it will be in the Unit 5. 001 to 005, NIC number. That person was not never born, because you have to have this thing. He is not neither a woman nor a man.
So you can confiscate those assets?
Absolutely.
if there are no owner.
But you know, Chandra, I don't know whether you're aware about the Markola property as well. Malvana property. There was no owner. There was no one who has built it. There's no one who owns the property.
But still there.
It's still there because it was miraculously built by God.
Dhananath, I want to ask this question on this IMF deal and the debt restructuring. Now this is something NPP spoke least in their election campaign, whereas Ranil Wickramasinghe and Sajith Premadasa's parties, they spoke much, right? Now they are in the government and they need to deal with this, right? Fortunately, the president in his address to the nation, spoke about those things, and it seems that he is giving more importance to that. And yesterday during the press conference, Minister Vijay Jayaratne said that still they want to kind of review the IMF deal, right? Which means it shows that they are still not prepared for that. How do you see this?
Yeah. So I think the IMF, what we need to first recognize is there are three analyses or reports that we discuss. There's debt sustainability analysis, there's extended fund facility agreement, there's IMF governance diagnostic. Debt sustainability analysis, I think that's a done deal. As I mentioned, pretty much it is done. There's very little room that you negotiate. You can do it, but it will have a cost. And now since the debt is restructured, it's difficult. Again, just to clarify, I am not saying what we received is the best outcome, but the challenge is there's a time cost. If we try to negotiate more and delay it, there's a cost. So I also feel the local debt restructuring could have been done better. Not only the local debt restructuring, even the sovereign bond, we could have, at least we need about a 40-45% haircut. So that is number one. Number two, on the extended fund facility, yes, you can negotiate some of the terms, but it has to be a logical reasoning. I mean, if you are saying I'm going to give this subsidy or something, this is the cost, but I am going to get that revenue from somewhere else. That negotiation or the timeline can be changed, but you should not overdo it, because we need to understand market works on perception. When you are unprepared and when you try to do haphazard changes, that gives the wrong signals to market. Same thing that you mentioned, it looks like you are not prepared for the negotiation. So that's where they have to be quite cautious, but there's room for negotiation. Every review, there will be definite negotiations, because every time they said, okay, even the debt restructuring was supposed to finish, I think few months ago, but now they extended, saying that, okay, you are negotiating in good faith. So that can be negotiated, but the governance diagnostic, it's clear, you have to execute. So that's...
So, Dhananath, just to understand, when must we pay the next bilateral loan that is due, and how much is it?
So, I really cannot recall the numbers, but what we got was, according to the joint working proposal, actually we are start paying from September the past due interest.
Interest only.
Yes.
28 only.
From 28 only we are paying the loans, but from 2022 April 12th up to date, there's past due interest that was supposed to pay from this month onwards. Those are not big payments, like I think 100 million, big in the sense like comparatively to the debt amount, about 100 million, I think 75 million. Dollars we were supposed to pay. That's a past due interest.
ISBs are not being paid. They have been given a commitment fee upfront of 2% to cover up the thing. So
no, but there are two types of loans. One is the multilateral loans, and as well as the bilateral loans.
Multilateral loans have been paid up to now. Being paid every day.
Yeah. So when is the next multilateral loan
every
due?
day we have been paying for the last 2 years. You can't.
We have not defaulted.
By convention, you can't touch it.
Yeah. So if you look at Sujiva Senasinghe's statement right after the elections, he says that the government is going to feel the pinch with regard to governance only after December, when the stocks of fuel will start depleting, when they have to start allocating money for all this. Now they have allocated approximately 5 billion Sri Lankan rupees on the elections as well. If there's another election, it's going to be another cost. So after December, what would be the testing ground for the government in play, Dhananath?
I do not see, I mean, if they stay with the IMF program and if they continue the reforms, I do not see a risk in December, to be very honest. Unless you do something drastically wrong, or where we become very unfortunate, there's a black swan event takes place, or like a bomb blast or a natural disaster comes in, then things could have been difficult. But otherwise, I do not see a risk in December. But of course, after 2028, there's a big risk that we go for either 18th IMF program or another economic downturn if we do not do the reforms. Basically, if we fail to grow the economy, that challenge is there. It's just a matter of time. And one event can basically bring us back. I'm not pessimistic, but that's the reality.
Chandra, now we know there is a war that's going on in the Middle East, Israel and Iran, Lebanon, Syria, all this, Jordan, all these countries have been affected. We know there is going to be an election in the United States in November as well. How would these impact tourism per se? Would this help Sri Lanka to get more tourist arrivals, or would it reduce the tourism arrivals
I think,
overall?
American election will not affect tourism in this country. But the Middle East war is very dangerous because a lot of airlines are coming through Middle East, unless you have direct airlines like even through Iran. So they have to divert. They have to go via Moscow and that area. This Turkish airline, like, if it has a big problem, Turkish airline is one of the biggest airlines coming to Sri Lanka and Maldives now. If they have a problem, it should spread into even Turkish. Once also we had early also when we had the Middle East war, not up to this level, when Gaddafi's and all these problems there, we had an impact. We had an impact. But if you have direct flights, then we are true.
I also want to ask you, Chandra, with regard to this controversial statement about Russian and Israelis setting up businesses in down south as well as east of the country. Can you enlighten us about this?
Yeah, it's affecting to our SMEs there. In the sense, especially the stylists, when they came in, and even the Russians and Ukrainians, they are still living there. So then they set up a business with another local person, and they set up a business and just run it. They have their own banks, they have their own restaurants. Sometimes our top politicians are going and eating there.
Who Chandra?
Don't ask me. You go through your see, and they say that's
I don't know, Chandra.
There's a Russian guy who is having a Japanese restaurant in. But that person who went there, and the top executive of the country, went there and praising him, right?
Not a presidential candidate, no?
No. Before that, right? Not before the election. So the guys, so then they think, oh my God, and this guy is coming and eating with us, so nobody can come and touch us. So these guys are not paying taxes. No, what do you call tourism development levy, nothing registered, no license, no legal license. You can go and have anything there.
So the Russians are also in the untouchable class now.
Russians are in untouchable, and Jewish community also. You can see Arugambe, certain pubs are written in Hebrew, right? So this is a problem. I think a lot of people are complaining. Now you can't even, boy from Valigama can't have even a surf class. All the surf teachers are either Russians or either the Israelis.
So Rohantha, the informal sector in tourism, this needs to be arrested. Now the Minister of Tourism right now is Vijay Jayaratne. What must he take into account?
President is.
No, President is the President is the Minister of Tourism. That's right. Vijay Jayaratne is the Minister of Foreign Affairs. Sorry for my mishap there. What must he do?
See, I think we need to first take stock of, to understand what is the debt that these guys owe and what kind of relief that they can be given to start sprucing up. Now there are many consultations happening with the banks. So right now there is this parate clause which is coming in, and it's right now stopped. But then the question is, different presidential candidates gave certain promises. Now how do you implement this is the question that people are asking. And if you look at the SME sector, we are talking about the tourism sector, which is absolutely key. You go to Ella, the whole area is SMEs. And right now they are asking how do they pay for their loans that they have taken. The total tourism debt stock is 700 billion.
But out of that, if you say this 700 million, maybe SME sector is maybe very small, but these monies have been taken by sometimes multinationals, sometimes big hotel owners, top guys. And not in the Hamada, they are never built hotel, they are still they are building. For them also they have given moratoriums. Hotels are not finished even.
So that's what I said, Shamir, we have to look at the debt stock and see who are the real SME sectors that you need to support.
Right. So I just want to ask one final question from one of our viewers. I'm getting a lot of questions today, so I'm trying to pose this as much as possible. I'm going to pose this to Mr. Jayaratne. Before inquiring into government officials, the first people the government should investigate on corruption should be the ministers on commissions taken. What happened to the Krish deal, for an example? They openly said who was paid the commissions. Can't a presidential commission be established and people should be given an opportunity to come forward and reveal these details?
Well, Krish file is there. Unit 5.
Unit 5. Unit 5 looks
Right.
Unit 5.
Everybody's talking about files.
So
This
we need
Unit
to-
5 sounds very interesting. Shall we trot down to Unit 5 one of these days?
all FCID files and all the ones done through what is called STAR are supposed to be in Unit 5. I mean, I haven't verified it.
So let's wrap up tonight's show. I want to give each speaker 2 minutes to wrap up your thoughts. So let's start off with Rohantha Athukorala, former chairman of EDB and Sri Lanka Tourism. What is the way forward with Sri Lanka? Taking Sri Lanka into the future, what must the government take stock of?
I think, Shamil, the first thing that we have to understand is that if you look at the expenditure by politician, the top 2 brands who spent almost 60% of the monies either on TV and the digital media have not got elected. Which just tells you that just because you shout on media doesn't mean that a consumer is gullible enough to go and vote. Which means that the consumer has really matured out. So taking this into account, looking at like what most of the panelists were saying, looking at freebies and small timing is not going to help a consumer to give a vote on the 14th of November. They are going to be looking at how do you drive tourism, or how do you run that global marketing campaign that we have been trying to launch for the last 10 years, which has always failed. And secondly, they are going to say, how do I look at free trade agreements and how do I make sure that our exporters can benefit from FTAs, not just signing agreements. But I mean, we have signed agreement with Thailand, which is a $418 billion economy, but there's nothing that we can export because we don't have a product range. So it's not just signing, but how do you increase the supply chain to those export markets? So my thought is that the time has come where Sri Lanka has matured out in terms of people and in terms of businesses, and people in power must understand that they need to start taking actions which are going to be absolutely logical in their eyes, otherwise they'll get thrown out even before the 4 years are over. Thank you.
Right. Thank you, Rohantha. I now move my attention towards Chandra Wickramasinghe.
Well, in the case of tourism, as mentioned, it's low-hanging fruits. So try to go maximum on, get maximum the tourists to Sri Lanka. So you have to maybe do some institutional changes in Sri Lanka tourism office and do promotions, properly planned, maybe digital-based tourism. And try to negotiate with airlines to get more airline seats to Sri Lanka. I think we are having lack of airline seats coming to Sri Lanka. Especially people are coming, we have 5 flights a day, but it's loaded up with a lot of other locals coming from Middle East to Sri Lanka, and that market is very big, about 2.5 million people living, and also Indians living there taking these flights. So your allotment on these flights from Paris straight to here, or London to Dubai to here, or London to Goa to here is very little. Out of flight, not even 40 seats are available from there to tourists to travel. So it's a thing that we must work on, and also save the SMEs. We are talking about haircuts. I think this SMEs in tourism also must get it, and save them and save the human resource. At the moment, with this new tax structure, none of our chefs are going to stay here because they have to pay tax and all those things. It goes on about 40%. to the government or to pay taxes. So if you want to save the industry, we need to keep our chefs here, keep our skilled workers here too.
Thank you very much, Chandra Wickramasinghe. I now move my attention towards Dhananath Fernando.
I would like to bring some advice from someone wiser than definitely me, that is Dr. Gai Kwang Sui, who was the advisor to Lee Kuan Yew when he was building Singapore. He said a president in his dashboard should check about 4 key parameters. First is how much money the central bank prints, because if they print money, you should know that you are in trouble. Second, your exchange rate. That is also connected to the money that you print. Third, your interest rates. That is also connected to the money that you print. The fourth, which is not connected, in a way connected, your cost of construction. Because your cost of construction affects the tourism, because when your cost of construction is high, your room rates are going to be high. You cannot expand businesses. Those 4 has to be the dashboard of president. But this president has about 3 other additional matrices. Another matrix is what am I going to do about the corruption and making sure that I stand for the mandate that I receive. And so he has to execute on that mandate. But my recommendation would be, while you are chasing behind, putting people behind the bars, you make sure that you bring down the corruption vulnerability first. You minimize the room that the corruption can take place. Because if you try to allow anyone to do anything and then try to put people behind the bars, this is not going to be a ever-ending battle. Final point is on do not impose price controls, because that will impact the poorest of the poor and that will bring difficult times for everyone. My final quote would be, stability is not everything, but without stability, everything is nothing. You create instability if you derail from the IMF program, if you start printing money. Even in this case, if President fails to implement the corruption deals, that will also bring instability when it comes to the government, because people will not be very happy with the government. So stability is not everything, but without stability, everything would be nothing.
Thank you very much, Dhananath.
Yeah, mine would be to all parties who are going to contest on the 14th of November, sign a social contract, all of you collectively, not on issues that each of you have differences, on change management that you are going to have, what this president has said about political culture and all the good things he has said, that they will sign up. Constitutional reforms, abolishing the presidency and electoral reforms, all the good things that have been said, they are not things worth fighting about. Let them sign up so that they will all get together. Even if there's a divided parliament, these things will happen. Reforms, devolution, all those things will be within that. Control of bribery, corruption, diagnostics, that taking forward. Meritocracy, transparency, open government, that is again should not be one. High level foreign direct investment, technology transfers, creating value chains, getting into it, export development, those are again, nobody should be able to contest. So any laws that are required, any regulations, we all will support. 2 more, human resource development to meet future needs, that is absolute must. And finally, open market operations. This has been great detail covered by Dhananath. And most important, digitization of the economy at the earliest and most efficient ways. These 10 characters, sign a social contract, and so that the people of Sri Lanka will benefit, whoever who comes, whatever the color of the party. On these we will not deviate, we will support in the parliament. Thank you.
Very quickly, Mr. Jayaratne, I'm not going to let you go yet. With regard to the largest IPO in Sri Lanka, which is aimed at raising 20 billion right now, the Lanka Transformer Limited IPO, do you want to add anything to this?
Unit 5 will have everything.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chandra Jayaratne. Thank you very much, Rohantha Athukorala. Any tips, Rohantha, as to who you would be voting on the 14th of November?
My mind is open. As I said, I was a matured out. I don't have a color. And based on the performance, I would.
So 40 days will be very crucial for you.
It's going to be crucial for the whole of the country.
Chandra, any joining of a political party?
Me?
Seems like slanting towards the red a little bit, joining with regard to his
when you get to 70s, you should forget politics. I'm trying to work another 2 years and pay my loans right before I die. So that's my. But I think country must prosper, as Chandra Jayaratne very correct said, and Dhananath, all are very top brains, and a lot of talent also, So the presidents, they should listen to people like that.
Dhananath, I heard that some political parties are scraping the barrel to find some good people to be in their list. Any plans?
No. I'm just planning to join Chandra as a travel guide to assist him till March.
Yeah, that would be idea. Yeah.
But you should know French.
I can learn.
Ms. Jayaratne, in the same vein, you seem to be having a lot rolled up your sleeves with regard to a lot of information. I'm just going to give you one opportunity one more time before we leave you tonight. Do you want to make any revelations about what you know? You speak about Unit 5, you speak about the CID. This is not good enough for the people of Sri Lanka. If there's anything that you want to add right now, this is your time. I'm going to give you 1 minute if you wish to speak on it.
Yeah, I think two things. For the March review, get the best brains. Former FCID director is a acknowledged FATF reviewer. Bring him in at this stage. Even he's buying pencils and pens. Most qualified money laundering expert in this country is buying pens and for the police. Bring him in and let him lead the change to ensure that we don't get into the grey list. That is very important. Second is bring out all the files that are there and work on them. And I think that is all that I would like to say.
The message I can take from whatever you are saying is go to Unit 5, go to the CID, unearth the files, start investigations, and you have the answers. Thank you very much, Mr. Chandra Jayaratne, the former chairman of Ceylon Chamber of Commerce, Dhananath Fernando, CEO of Advocate Institute, Chandra Wickramasinghe, chairman of Theme Resorts Sri Lanka, as well as Rohantha Athukorala, former chairman of EDB and Sri Lanka Tourism. Thank you very much, gentlemen, for joining us this evening on Face the Nation. We are just a couple of weeks away from an all-important general election in the country. Let's hope for the best and let's hope that Sri Lanka prosper. Thank you very much, Nevish. Thank you very much, Shihar, for joining us this evening on the show. As always, I leave you tonight with a quote, as I always do. Optimism is a faith that leads to achievement. Nothing can be done without hope and confidence. Take care and good night.